Hey guys, back with another Echoing Thoughts podcast here, episode number 27. This one's kind of a special one I talked about in my previous pod where we're gonna have a guest. Excited for this one. I got my guy, kind of one of the smartest people that I know that kind of talks Maple, kind of one of the people that I've talked to about everything. Really just spitballing, asking him questions. He's kind of really been into PC Maple, and he's been playing global or playing mobile for a long time. That's Mirjane. He's a Buccaneer in Scania. You'll see him in our Damien runs. He's also plays Pally So thank you for coming. Appreciate you having
Thank you. Thank you for welcoming me on the podcast.
you. um,
Excited to be here.
yeah, thank you for being here. I know we talk a lot, kind of offline and stuff like that, but we just had our Damien run, first one since V3, and it was a little different, right? We had some ran into some troubles that we uh, didn't run into in the past, kind of the new meta. We had a different aggro. Our shade was actually aggro for most of phase two. Um, Kind of made it a little more difficult. He was running into some problems with HP. They didn't get as much. They don't have as much HP as warriors, and they don't have iframes like thieves and pallies. So um, some learning curves. Branding was a little different, but I want to talk to you about Damien really, since we've kind of been going back and forth about how to, um, how to prepare. We've been doing this for a long time, a couple months now. Um, just kind of getting into it, progressing. So we have pretty good experience with phase one, phase two. For all those teams that you think are kind of just starting, right? Want to get some reps with V3. What would be kind of your top, which say is your top priority thing that they should focus on? And then I'll give mine and you can give your third one.
I would say communication is definitely my top one, and then mechanics, and then positioning of the boss of how you play it.
Yeah. Yeah. Communication for sure. For me too. You know, I think what would you say makes Damien kind of different from any other boss when it comes to communication?
I think there's a lot of things that you have to keep track of, such as branding, res timers, and then there's also the rotation of Damien as well. That's also pretty hard to keep track of. So but
Yeah.
once you get it down, everything's pretty crystal and clear.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we've, kind of when we were talking about communication, the first thing we did was skill rotation, right? That's kind of like 101. Um, if one person knows it, or a few of us do, we kind of pick up on it pretty quickly. That just makes it a lot easier for everyone else. Um, and one of the things that we really did was we assigned roles as we started to progress and get into phase two. Well, phase one, what would you say kind of in phase one where we I guess our biggest trouble with communication was?
I guess in the beginning we didn't really know that the dash gave us branding, so a lot of us just took it, and now since we're getting better at it, we're beginning to dodge a lot more. So, and also in P1 we don't have to take the black altar, so
Yeah.
it's really beneficial for us to do.
Yeah. The communication kind of goes hand in hand with mechanics, right? We talked about
Mhm.
skill rotation, right? Knowing that and then knowing how to dodge it, right? Knowing how to position. Um, Mechanics was important, knowing how to maximize your DPS and just surviving in general. I think that um, if we were to kind of talk about those things as being the most important, just because, well, um, there's just a lot going on. Like you said, it really one thing. It's unlike anything we've ever seen before, right? It's not just hard magnets. We can do skill rotation, memorize that, and everyone just follows. It's not like um, arc where you can screen crack. You can benediction here, and just kind of call that out. It's really we assigned people to do specific things, right? Like, um, what do you think about that? How we had people in phase two, I was calling out skills. We were talking about dash directions. We had someone assigned to blue orbs, right? We had someone assigned to Black Altar. What do you think about that? That was really kind of made it difficult. I think a lot of people are gonna have to get kind of used to.
I think that everyone just has to get used to everyone's voices. I think if you don't talk, then how are you gonna do this, boss? It's like if you're the one that's gonna be muted all the time, then how do you communicate with to the rest of the team that, hey, this thing's over here, there's branding here, my timer's almost up. Uh, and then there's a skill rotation. There's a lot of things that you have to keep track of, and if you don't listen, then you just die.
It gets overwhelming very quick for sure. Like I
Yes.
remember um at the start I was trying to do everything, right?
Mhm.
And then it just like it was impossible. For me, I was trying to take on a large role, and then it was like, I gotta step back. I had to give up calling for reses, right? That was a big thing.
Mhm.
I was calling reses, and I was calling res and then slow to call the next skill, right? And it kind of just snowballed from there. I lose track. And so yeah, it was Damien is kind of everyone all hands on deck, right? Like you said, if you're muted, you're kind of like you're kind of just leaving everyone else kind of out to dry, right? So that's what makes it interesting. People can mute all the time. DPS a lot of the times can just mute and just listen and they'll be fine. But for us, we need our phantoms to be speaking. We need our bishop to be speaking. We needed our people that are controlling black altars and the blue orbs. Everyone need to speak, and that's kind of something that I think people don't realize. It's kind of more than DPS, right? You see people, oh, they now that V3 came out, all the big A1S pandemonium are just going to clear just because of DPS. I think that's it's harder, easier said than done, right? It takes a
Yeah.
real team effort. I think that's what I like about our team. We're progressing, we're speaking up, we're communicating, and you know that's priority number one, right? As the more you can get comfortable with people talking and communicating, just the better it's going to be, the smoother it's going to get over time. And what do you think about mechanics makes kind of Damien um, different or challenging compared to any other boss that we've kind of had to deal with before?
I think that Damien just moves around the map a lot. It's really, really tough to manage where he goes. And our, and like you said before, there's three carries in our run. Our Nightwalker and our Shade as well. So if one person is on one side and the other person on the other side, Damien can go either way. So that's what makes it really, really hard.
Yeah, yeah, that dash is something, if you don't know, we've talked about before, 190K dash, right? Pretty much wipes out half the map. Um, and we're trying to like you said, the number one, the mechanic is really controlling that dash, right? That's what wiped us today a ton. We had aggro change all the time, and that just forces them to change direction. Um, Kind of was something unexpected, right? Something we have to get used to. And also, um, besides that dash, I think black altars, right? Something that you've been kind of in charge of.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think is like makes that kind of unique? What makes that different than, a very challenging mechanic?
The Black Altar can just spawn anywhere on the map, and you just have to be ready for it. And if uh if your team isn't also ready for it, then it sort of makes it pretty tough. You can get killed by fireballs, you can get killed by dash, you can get killed by dives, everything. Everything that Damien does. So
Yeah,
it's pretty
you kind
rough.
of. I remember, today's run we were kind of laughing, kind of just they the five people that were on the black altar kind of were sacrificial lambs basically. There was a black altar, they had to stand there, they couldn't move, and then we knew the dash was coming to wipe them out, and they kind of just had to stand there, and then they cleared the branding and they all died immediately after. It was kind of like it's kind of a funny moment, right? It was a that's kind of the roles, right? People, I think that's what makes it very challenging. I think that's what a lot of teams are gonna have a hard time with, right? We um, do a really good job of kind of knowing our roles as well. That's kind of part of the mechanics. Like you said, we have three really strong DPS, um, but if we have everyone's a strong DPS, sometimes that doesn't always work, right? You have to have people that are willing to sacrifice, like we said, do the black altar, sacrifice their DPS. Sometimes sacrifice taking the lives to clear this mechanic that is so crucial um, to doing the boss, to clearing the boss, right? And so I think that's what is going to be a real learning curve for a lot of people, right? A lot of teams, you only want to look at the DPS charts, right? Especially with V3 here, you only want to look at how much damage you're doing. Um, and it's more about like, kind of starring in your role almost, right? Like we've talked about, not everyone can be the top DPS. The top DPSs do the most damage in Damien because they can just stand there and in the corner and aggro, while everyone else kind of does the mechanics, right? Everyone else does the blue orbs and the black altars. And I think, um, that's challenging, right? It's hard for people to put aside that ego, and do what's best for the team, right? Especially with all the, you know, everything that's going on with progression and stuff like that. Everyone just wants to see how much damage you're doing. So I think that's the hardest part. And what was the last one that you talked about? Was it positioning?
Yes, positioning.
Yeah.
So like it goes hand in hand with mechanics. So
Yeah.
um I think if you position Damien in a spot where he can only dash in the corner, that's best, right? But everyone isn't always the same. So if you have him dash on the left, it can just wipe out the whole squad. So yeah.
Yeah. And you're talking about in phase two. And I think positioning is equally as important to phase one. Phase one is kind of now it has to be quick. It's really important to get through it fast. And if your positioning's poor and you dash them in the wrong direction, right? You aren't stacked for rotted, right? That's something that we've always talked about where people
Hmm.
kind of just stand in a line and the rotted kind of lands on us in a bad spot and kind of splits us up. And that sacrificing DPS, right? That adds up. And I think that's something that, when we were first starting out, we didn't really understand, right? Ranged want to stay ranged, right? They feel safe. I was talking to our bishop. She's like, yeah, I feel safe in ranged. And we had a hard time to kind of retrain her to stack, right? With the melee range. It's safe there, right? It's important for us to all be stacked so that we can move the rotted accordingly, so we can control it, so that we can all move, so that we can maximize DPS, avoid mechanics. So like you said, positioning is super underrated. It goes hand in hand with mechanics and as well. But it's not just in phase two. It's not just dash direction. It's phase one and everything as well. Um, so the final question is, I think people want to know because we've been practicing the longest, right? I wouldn't say we're the best team in the game. Obviously not. We don't have the best gear, but we've started earlier, right? We've been kind of sharing our progress um, and learnings and stuff like that. Right now, we kind of, I would say we have the best grasp of the boss. Would you say in the end it's achievable in the current meta?
I still don't think it's achievable, but I think we can get it down to at least 50% HP.
Yeah. What do you think? What would you say is kind of things that need to be done? Do you think it's DPS? Do you think it's things that have to change with Damien, HP pools? What would you say is kind of stands out that really needs to change?
I think for Damien, the damage of its skills really need to be changed so that it's not really behind a paywall and that the orbs, when you get to a higher stage, just does too much damage. Way too much damage.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something that, I talked about in a previous pod, but we're hand in hand. We agree. It's like I feel like they just copy and pasted things from Korean Maple Story mobile, right? The
Mhm.
numbers of the orbs, and it just doesn't translate. The HP pools, the damage that it's doing. So definitely, and I think that Black Altar stuff is tough, right? With your kind of sitting ducks in a sense. Iframes might help. Being able to use fair trade with Black Altars might be something, right? Just these kind of things that um, you know, in combination. Maybe it's not always DPS, right? Sometimes it's just about being able to do mechanics properly and survive. Um, but another thing I want to throw out there that KMSM has different than us is the speed and jump factor, something that super underrated, but we've noticed. Um, it's just so much easier to get to black altars and avoid things and do damage when you're faster and you're jumping higher, things like that. So, yeah, I hope that there's, maybe some Asia team will prove us wrong. But I think we haven't even scratched the hard part of the boss, to be honest, right? Like
Mhm.
we're it seems like we're progressing. We are, but the hard part is still not even close, right? So I think we're still a long way to go. But it's exciting to see you guys, your guild is going to start with your paladin,
Hmm.
right? Next week.
Yes. Like
Yeah.
this Sunday actually.
Oh, nice. Yeah. So it's more guilds are trying. I'm sure they're experimenting things like that. So that's good. We'll see how other teams do. We're gonna take a break a little bit right here, and then we're gonna come back. We're actually gonna talk about patch notes, V3. But before that, we want to talk about the TOS changes, something that's kind of been overshadowed recently. It was a big thing when it first came out, and V3 they kind of threw that in there, the June update, kind of to hopefully throw the TOS stuff under the rug. But I know you have great insight on this. It's kind of you have great things to say. So excited to kind of talk about that after this break. All right, we're back, and we're going to talk about we're with Mir Jane here. We just talked about Damien, and now we kind of want to talk about TOS. Before the break, kind of we're just talking about how they brought it up, and then it was a big thing for like 1 or 2 days, and then immediately V3 came in, right? And then that was just everything, talking point, and you know the bans were implemented. People were getting banned for all sorts of reasons, right? And I thought it'd be a good time to talk with Mirjane because he's one of those players that um, really loves to play the game, right? He has a ton of votes. He's really big into Legion. Um, he has a few mains, right? His Buccaneer and his Paladin, but they don't AB a ton, right? They don't. They're not super high level, but he has a ton of really. He takes advantage of the ults. He takes advantage of events. He takes advantage of just the game in general. So I wanted to talk to him about how kind of just explaining this TOS, these changes, and kind of just his input, how he kind of thinks about it and affects the, how it affects the game, the economy, the player base in general.
I think that with this TOS, it makes multi accounts a lot harder to fund your main. And that's the main reason why I sort of did it. I used my different accounts to fund my main, sort of transfer mesos back and forth and transfer items back and forth. If without my other accounts, I probably wouldn't even be here today, you know. And I think there's definitely some changes that need to be made if we're only allowed to have one account. So like there needs to be better rewards from events, if anything, if they only want us to have one account, or lower meso costs of alchemy stuff like
Mm-hmm.
radiant exalts, radiant reduction scrolls, hyperstats. Right now it takes 2 bill just to max one stat. So it's a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of mesos. And not a lot of free to play players can get that, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, you know, like you're talking about free to play players, right? It's a big kind of demographic. I think a lot of times we focus on, I focus on a lot of the higher end players, um, right? But free to play players, it's hard, right? Especially when, you're capped on red mezzos, right? You don't have, mezzo rates aren't great, right? They've been trying to, I guess the reason for these changes have been to kind of eliminate bots, right? In the game. And obviously it's affecting everyone. It's not just affecting
Hmm.
free to play players, it's not just affecting whales, everyone. No one's safe. Everyone's kind of on edge. Um, and you know, like you talked about, I think the events one is a great idea, right? It gets people to play the game. Um, you know, and those rewards have been something that people have been wanting for. They're sad, right? They're outdated for a long, long time. And just thinking of this event, you just look at the difference between the Starlight, the Moon Fragment, Starlight Fragment, whatever you call it, packages, or the shop versus the other shop. The other shop is sad, right? It's like forever scrolls and flames, and like it just feels like you only get one or two an event. There's definitely changes that can be made there to just kind of offset, these changes that they're making. And I hope that they have some sort of plan, right? I hope they don't just implement this and kind of just leave us high and dry. Um, I would like to add on, for me, it was like increasing the red mezzos cap, right? I'm like big right now on red mesos and trying to maximize those, um, and not just like use them randomly. Um, Maybe increasing that from 100 to 200 per account or per character, whatever it is, and storage, um, increase meso drop rate. That just feels like it just benefits everybody, right? And it's not a big deal. And I like the idea of just the forging and alchemy. Geez, those costs add up real fast. Like I talked about, the red meso caps, just you can't forge anything with when you're capped at 100 mil, right? So yeah, I think that this is something that I just wanted to talk about with you. Um, what are your thoughts about how it's going to affect you personally, right? For me, um, it just further like forces me to think about you know the risk, right? Is it worth it? Um, I don't play, I don't have time to play a lot, more than one character, more than an account, really. I barely have time to do my ults and load AP and do the dailies for my paladin. Um, but I can't like for me, it's just about trying to find ways to like now I'm like scrounging for powders, right? I'm scrounging for like um ways to make stuff with red mezzos and sell on TS, right? Just the right way. But it seems like
Yeah.
even that is sketchy, right? People are
Hmm.
getting flagged for all kinds of different things. So really, I just wish that um, we had some sort of reasoning, I guess, some sort of like basis of what they're going off of. But what kind of things are you changing? What kind of things do you feel like you're going to change, if you're going to change anything at all, um, to your gameplay, really?
For me, right now, it's really, really risky to just even like sell nodes probably, or
Yeah.
even like just transfer stuff between accounts.
Yeah.
And it just there's not really much you can do. And if you get TS banned, then you can't really sell anything to get mesos anymore.
Yeah.
So, and it
Yeah.
just makes that progression a lot harder.
Yeah. Honestly, it's just like for right now, it feels like just you kind of just hope that it was almost a bluff or just stay low for a little bit, kind of see what's happening, what's acceptable, what's not. Hopefully they just move on. They're just focusing on uh, anniversary and what's coming in July. July's a big month,
Oh
right?
yeah.
So yeah, it's something that I just don't want to like, forget about. Right? It's
Hmm.
a pretty big impact, and it could change the game. The game could be drastically different if these things are. It depends on how serious they are. Um, but that's about it. I want to talk about that, and then we'll take a break again, a last break, and then we're just going to talk about V3, kind of really what we wanted to talk about, winners, losers, things that we took away, what we kind of saw this first day after the patch. Um, so we'll see after this break. All right, we're back here with my guy Mir Jane, talking about V3, right? Kind of the update we expected in a week, and we got it a week early. Super hyped, super excited. Um, Kind of just spent the last couple days just opening note or the last day opening nodes, maxing V skills, kind of seeing where all the other classes stack up. Um, Still early, right? We just did Lotus after reset. We did some Damien, guild content. Um, it's nice. A lot of classes that were underperforming are looking really strong. Um, for example, our Shade, um, cranking, beat me in Lotus, beating me in Damien. Um, their lines were very underwhelming to be um, pre V3, and now they're showing out. Same for a lot of classes. And it wasn't just the V3, it was the rebalance as well. That really helped a ton of classes. And but for you, who is kind of your number one biggest winner from the rebalance and V3, things like that?
For my number one, it has to be Mercedes.
Hmm.
We have one in our guild, and he's just popping off every single time. Instantly doubles everyone's damage in the first 30 seconds. It's insane.
Yeah, but it's their V3 it's just like a
The
burst
whole
top of the unicorn, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's a 7-second burst.
Jeez.
and it works with their clones, and
Yeah.
it's just really good.
Just a ton of lines. And the
Yeah.
funny part is like thing about Mercedes is you kind of knew from KMSM they were going to be OP after V3. And actually, I was
Hmm.
talking to Frenchies, and he said they actually got less lines in KMSM. Um, so still insane, still OP. Um,
Hmm.
just yeah, Mercedes arguably probably the top DPS class right now. Um, no shocker there, kind of the biggest winner. They've been good pre V3, but now it's kind of just yeah, they're kind of unrivaled um, overall. For me, it was I guess my biggest winner. The thing that kind of surprised me the most, really, like I we kind of knew for a while, kind of which classes had the best V3s. You know, Mercedes, DKs, Night Lords, Shadow Wars, Evans, insane, right? You could just see how many lines they're doing. Arc, even. For me, it was something that was kind of unexpected, right? It was um, the Warrior and the Mage, their their common skill, right? KMSM, the thing about ours was it's adding an iframe. KMSM did not have this. I talked about it a little bit yesterday's pod, but it was really shocking, right? When Warriors saw, like, we knew, I saw it in a translation earlier, a little bit earlier than the patch notes came out. But then when the mages got it, that was even better, in my opinion, because mages needed it real bad. Um, Especially classes like bishops, they were just kind of sitting ducks out there, especially in all the runs. So just nice to have them have some utility. Warriors, obviously, Paladins, yeah, just another iframe for them. DKs, heroes feels like very nice for them. Just on top of um, just the iframe part is just kind of what makes global different, right? It's very unique. It was unexpected, and I hope that they continue to kind of add these little wrinkles that makes our game unique from Korean MapleStory, um, mobile, and the Japanese version on the other versions because um, you know it's a different game where they're trying to make it a different game, necro routes, things like that. So I like that they added that. That was a definite winner for me. Surprise is just everyone across the board, even at level one, you get a 3 second iframe. Even if it's on 180 seconds, it gets down or two 2 minutes or 190 seconds or whatever it is at level one, it gets down to 60 seconds. That's insane, right? Just another utility. Um, I really like that. But for you, what's your next winner?
My next winner, it would have to be most likely DK as well.
Hmm.
DK is just absurdly insane burst too.
Yeah.
Although it didn't go really well in today's Lotus run, I still like you could still feel the power in his run. Every single line caps, so it's actually just insane.
Yeah. I mean, DKs kind of have like a little, it's like a dual blade V1 kind of 2.0 better.
Mm-hmm.
All the lines cap, right? It's huge range, it's insane. You kind of pair that with a lot of classes like Shadowers and Paladins and Mercedes, kind of just that burst is insane, right? It's kind of like even like an Ice Lightning Mage V2 or V1 or whatever it is. It just feels like those hold down skills that are just doing a ton of lines. It feels nice. I really like that pick because like DKs have forever just been consistent damage dealers, right?
Mm, yeah.
Mercedes have been top end burst, like Paladins, the top DPS classes always had that high end burst. DKs were a consistent damage dealer across the board, no matter what. And now that they have that burst, it just feels like just a little bit more skill cap, a little bit more fun, a little more for oomph in like the shorter runs where they can compete, guild content, things like that. So it's pretty sweet to see um, that they kind of have this in their toolkit as well. Those hold down skills are something that I have to get used to. It's funny
Yep.
because like
As
uh,
paladins.
just
If you
having all these skills, type B is just not enough. So it's something we have to get used to. Just if you mess up the hold down skill, that's a long cooldown, a lot of lines missed, for sure. Yeah, I have to agree. DKs are insane. Another kind of honorable mentions for the winners. Um, we're just rattling off like Pally's obviously. It's very similar V3. Lumi's Lumi's got it wasn't from
Evans.
their V3, it was actually their rebalance. Their V2's got insanely strong. We talked about Shades, they got a ton of lines. Um, Pathfinders, their rebalance actually was pretty nice. Their Tempest um, got revamped a ton, right? If you don't know, they got more lines to their Tempest, but they also got like that maximum repetition increase as well. It's kind of one of those sneaky things that they don't put in the patch notes. That's kind of interesting, right? Like it words it really weird where it says like it does X amount of lines, but there's a maximum amount of repetitions basically to it when it's kind of duration based. So they increase that on top of the lines. So it exponentially kind of increased their lines all at once. Their burst is much higher. So they actually got sneaky, right? Something you'll see in the patch notes. So if you have kind of one of those classes that has that repetition, that maximum repetition count in it, definitely be on the lookout. They may sneakily kind of increase that or decrease that without you knowing. So that one's pretty sweet. A lot of classes. Arc, Wild Hunter's got a nice rebalance. Um, but unfortunately, with all the kind of the winners, there's got to be losers, right? People that are kind of underwhelming. For me, the first one, sadly, has to be Bishop. I talked about them previously. They keep getting rebounds. They keep getting more lines to Angel Ray. It feels nice in theory, but when you look at the lines, you look at the numbers, man, are they behind the lines. I have seen people talk about how all of their V skills, when maxed, are 15% ignoring the defense. So their burst skills are all have extra kind of built-in cap. So that's kind of one silver lining, but it feels like bishops still are just feel like a tier below, right? And kind of, yes, they're useful utility, right? It's hard to replace them. But I'm telling you, phantoms can replace them. Feels like, especially in Damien, better survivability, iframes, more damage, res, time leap. Um, Bishops are in a tough spot. A big player pool, right? Obviously, very important for like auto battle, things like that for the utility and other bosses like Arc, Lotus. Hopefully, they kind of get some sort of rebalance, continue to kind of build up their lines. Maybe it's not as bad as I think it is. Maybe it's not as bad as the charts say, but we'll see. That's kind of my biggest loser. They seem like based on the charts that I've seen, they have the lowest line count um, over 3 minutes. Who's your biggest loser?
For me, going off your common skill, it would have to be the pirate's common skill.
Hmm.
Um, so it's not really a buff or anything for us. And if you already cap, the skill does absolutely nothing for you. Just take it off your V matrix.
Hmm.
And what it does is that when you use the skill, it gives you a percent of fizz damage increase, but when it's off cooldown, you lose that fizz damage for the remaining duration of overdrive,
Hmm.
which is a bad thing because if you already cap, then what is the point of overdrive?
Hmm.
And once it's off cooldown, then you just lose all that damage again. So that's one of my biggest losers.
So your base physical damage percent actually goes down like with that buff while it's on cooldown. Like it doesn't like
Yes.
it. Geez, that's
So you gain a fizz damage buff for like let's say 20 seconds, and then for the next 40 seconds you lose even more. So it's
it's
like it's a lose-lose situation anyway. So if you cap, just take it off your skill, don't use it, don't touch it
yeah. I mean, that sounds very
until
sounds underwhelming for sure. Disappointing, especially when you hear, one of the winners is people with iframes. They get free iframes from their comments, right?
Mhm.
Even archers, their crit damage percent is getting buffed with fair trade. Um,
Yeah,
so they're getting up to like
that's insane.
75% crit damage percent. Um, Insane, right? So yeah, that's pretty brutal. Not gonna lie. And I guess for me, the kind of another big loser. I talk about Pathfinders. I don't think they're that big of a loser because they got that buff. Their V3 is pretty underwhelming. Is that barrier that has utility, but compared to other people's skills, I mean, it's not a skill that attacks. right? Talk about wind archers. Again, they're not getting an attacking skill. It's a survivability. It's an orbital orb. Um, why am I blanking out? Who is a big loser? Do you remember who I said?
Uh,
Hmm.
I think you said Wind Archer, right?
Yeah,
You already said that.
yeah. I guess it is wind archers. It just feels like
Yeah.
any class that doesn't have like an attacking skill, right? And they didn't get any rebalances. Yeah, I guess wind archers would be my loser. Yeah, they have some survivability with it. Um, but it just feels like when people are getting 1,400 lines burst, their line counts are going up. Wind archers actually lines are in a pretty good spot. Insane to think about, but it's yeah. I think if I was a wind archer, I would be a little bit um disappointed when you see all these other cool V skills and you're kind of just getting a kind of just
Just a
shell.
shield.
Yeah, a
Yeah.
shield. That's not even, and when you see, again, not to keep bringing this up, but like if other whole categories of classes getting iframes as their common skill and your main skill is maybe worse than that, I don't know. It's yeah, I'd be a little frustrated, but they are getting Cygnus Knights remaster coming up
Mm-hmm.
next. So they're supposed
Soon.
to be really strong with that. But any other losers you have? Um,
I think for me to go for your Wind Archer,
for archers?
suggestion is the
Mhm.
Explorer Archers.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're not really top of the leaderboards or very common, as you could say, as I would think. And they're not as flashy or as useful as some of the other ones. So yeah,
yeah,
I think I really wish there was like more BMs, or I think in your Lotus run you have a marksman as well, right? So
yeah,
we'll see how that goes on Monday for
yeah,
you. And
yeah.
you
That's
you
kind of
also
forgotten,
have
right?
the #1 Pathfinder on your team as well. So
Yeah, that's enough about Pathfinders already. But yeah, it's V3. It's here. Regardless, and I really liked just kind of to want to reiterate what I talked about in the last podcast, just how they gave rebalances to classes. Um,
mhm.
that's nice. It gives kind of hope, right? They could just throw in rebalances anywhere, right? It was only a handful of classes, but they made an impact, right? Pathfinder's huge, Lumi's huge, Wild Hunters huge, Kaisers got more lines, Iran's got more lines, right? Everyone is just um, even Angelic Busters, Battle Mages, see us for some reason getting more lines. It's at least shows that they're trying to improve, right? They're not just waiting for a big rebalance. They're not nerfing classes. They're building up classes, right? On top of the V3. Um, hype, exciting. It's only been one day. I made 2 podcasts since um this patch. Awesome. Um, thank you for coming. Thank you for staying up late with me. I know we had a long day of Lotus, Arc,
Mhm.
dailies, Damien. We did a lot today. Podcasts. Thank you. Thank you for staying on with me. Thank you for talking with me. Had a lot of fun. We chat all the time, but it's kind of nice to do this on platform and kind of talk about these um, these big things, these big events. Um, appreciate you coming on. Um, anything else you want to add?
I think that may we could possibly just see another MDC change within the next few months
Mm,
with all these new changes.
yeah,
Everyone's getting used to their skill wheel. So, I hope everyone has fun with the new V3. And I think people will still enjoy the game even
yeah,
after everything. And I hope more Damien clears soon.
right, yeah. A lot like with V3, it's not the end. I like like you said, right? It's not the end. It's kind of just like we still got to clear Damien. Right? People are still going to try Arc and Lotus. Max damage cap, we're due, right? Maybe more, remasters, rebalances, right? Um, maybe just a lot of changes, right? I don't think this is the end, right? Don't what I've been noticing, they've kind of been every patch has been big, right? We're not just waiting till end of the year, right? We're not just waiting till 6 months down the line. We're not waiting. It's kind of next month, July. It could be huge in a few weeks. It could be something big, right? So be excited. Enjoy the game. Don't play. Don't burn out, right? Don't go crazy. Um, have fun. Try new content. Play new classes. Play with your friends. But thank you again for coming. This was awesome. Always enjoy chatting with you, getting your insight. Um, we'll I'll probably post some Lotus Damien content, PRs and things like that this week. But this podcast will be going up uh, tomorrow, maybe the next day. But thank you again for being here. Thank you all for listening, watching. I'll see you guys next time.